Senator Nate Lewin, who is the sponsor of SB 130, Firearm and Firearm Accessory Modifications, and we will also be hearing from Nika Allgood, who is the member of the board of the Gun Violence Prevention Center of Utah. It's an honor to be here with these advocates as we introduce a bill to ban assault weapons, which is a much-needed step towards protecting Utah families from the devastating consequences of gun violence. As an emergency room nurse, I've seen firsthand the terrible toll that firearms take on human lives. I never imagined that I would be treating gunshot wounds, especially those involving young children, so frequently, and that it would become such a frequent part of the job. But unfortunately, in Utah, it's become a frequent reality. And that's why I'm here today, to stand up for stronger gun laws and gun safety laws that can prevent more tragedies like the ones that I've seen in the emergency department. This bill today is aimed at addressing one of the most dangerous categories of firearms, which are assault weapons, like the AR-15. And these weapons have become the choice of mass shootings across our nation. They're cheap to make, but they are sold for thousands of dollars, and the gun industry is eager to sell as many of them as possible. These guns are responsible for a disproportionate amount of deaths and injuries, and when paired with large capacity magazines, they can unleash a devastating rapid barrage of gunfire in a matter of seconds. Whether it's in schools or shopping malls or places of worship, we've seen how these weapons turn ordinary places into war zones, and so this bill is designed to prevent this kind of destruction. This bill is also about saving lives, about by reducing access to firearms in times of crisis by requiring a short waiting period after a firearm purchase. The reality is that gun violence costs Utah $5.5 billion each year, and over 80% of gun deaths in Utah are suicide. Utah has the 10th highest rate of gun suicide in the country, and every 24 hours, another life is lost to a preventable tragedy. As a state, we must do everything that we can to reduce this toll on this number, and this includes reducing the easy access and availability of weapons designed for mass killing and destruction. This bill is not about just preventing mass shootings. It's about protecting families from gun violence in all of its forms. Whether it's in the ER, in homes, or in our communities, the consequence of accessible firearms is too dire to ignore. We have the power to change this. By passing this bill, we can prevent future tragedies and keep our loved ones safe. To all the parents, responsible gun owners, and citizens of Utah, I urge you to take action. Store your firearms securely, unloaded and locked up, and separate from your ammunition. It's a simple step that can save lives. And remember, it's not just in your homes that we need to secure firearms. We need to make sure that firearms are also locked up and secured safely in vehicles as well, to prevent easy access by children and criminals. So I want to thank Senator Nate Lewin for his leadership and dedication to this critical issue. His support to ban assault weapons shows his commitment to the safety of Utah families, and I'm proud to stand with him in this fight. Together, we can make Utah a safer place for all of us, and we can prevent future tragedies, protect families, and ensure that no more lives are lost to senseless gun violence. Let's get this done. Thank you. And then now we're going to be hearing from Ellie Brownstein.
So I am a pediatrician. My goal, my work, passion is having healthy kids and having kids grow up. Nearly half of Utah houses have guns. Nearly half of Utah households have children, not very big. But we have a lot of guns and a lot of kids who have the potential to have access. Somewhere between half and 2/3 of guns in homes in general are unlocked and often loaded so that they can be used if homeowners feel like they need them. Many adults mistakenly think that kids don't know where the guns are. And if you've ever hunted, as a kid, your house for Christmas presents, I don't trust that one at all. In fact, studies have shown when they talk to kids that 75% of them know where the guns are. And so that doesn't help keep kids safe. Approximately 400 Utahns die every year from gun injuries, and almost 400 children in the country under 18 unintentionally shoot themselves or somebody else with a gun, that number should be 0. We should be able to keep our kids safe. A common reason people feel like they need their gun for security, and ideally, if we had our choice, the best place would be the gun out of the house, but for some that's not going to work. So there are methods, biometric boxes that you can keep a gun safe and the kids can't get into it. We need to minimally store our guns safely. Over 80% of deaths from guns in Utah are suicides, and those also should be prevented. There are studies that show if people had 5 to 10 minutes longer to get access to their lethal means, they would change their mind half the time. And 5 to 10 minutes for those folks saves lives. We can work on that one too. I've taken care of kids with gunshot wounds, and I never should. And I have one kid right now who's quadriplegic for life, ventilator dependent. Their whole family has changed because a gunshot came through their house. They were unrelated. In that case, the gun wasn't in the house. But again, we should be able to keep our children safe. 5-year-olds who pick up a gun, not realizing its lethal potential, shooting a sibling, the whole family will never be the same. The 5-year-old will never be the same as with any kid. That's something you never want your kids to live with. So let's figure out how to prevent it.
Now we'll hear from Senator Nate Whelan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it. It's been a hectic day, so sorry it took me a second to get in. But SB 130, this has been a interesting bill to work on and put this issue forward. It's a critical issue that I hear about from constituents almost on a daily basis, definitely on a weekly basis. It's a big bill. It's definitely a big bill. It's 50 some odd pages long, and I think it's a big bill to address a big problem. So we see issues popping up in our communities all the time. One of the things that just gets me every time I see another story about negligence and a toddler getting access to a gun in a parent's car or something along those lines. We've seen a couple of those happen here in Utah just in recent weeks and months. There was a couple of these incidents over the summer that came back to back that was just heartbreaking. So we know how many guns there are in this country. There's a lot of them. We're not gonna get rid of them. That's not what this bill is about. They exist. It's a constitutional right, and there are ways to work around that and provide a little bit more, sensible regulations that do get into this space that have been the subject of legal proceedings in different jurisdictions all the way up to the Supreme Court. So we know this is not it's not an unlimited right. There are certainly aspects we can work on related to public safety, which has been a really large focus here in Utah this very year. Every single day we're hearing bills about gang violence and other things of that nature, and so this certainly gets to that area of preventing some of the most dangerous weapons, the most dangerous accessories from getting into the wrong hands, and hopefully reduces some of the spread of that sort of thing across the state. So certainly fits in with that priority that we've seen from leadership. And another aspect of this, again, I mentioned I've heard from constituents frequently. We know these are popular proposals too. The Deseret News, which is generally seen, I think, is quite a balanced and reputable organization, has done polling on this issue, found support for proposals in this bill, and also more stringent ones even that poll even higher, of majority support there. So we do have support, even if it's not apparent here at the legislature all the time. It really is probably very community dependent. I represent more of an urban district, and certainly, there are important reasons for folks in my community to own guns, and there are important reasons for folks across the state to be able to recreate and hunt. I think those are all great, and we're not trying to stop that, but we are trying to help with the violence and other impacts that do happen in communities across the state. So We're looking here at using some existing legal frameworks across different spaces to bring some new categories underneath those existing regulations, and they're not gigantic steps, but I think they are important steps that will start to get at some of the biggest ramifications here. So, yeah, thank you for being here. I'll hang around if you have to get to a committee meeting, and I may get pulled out to take a vote or two, but we'll try to stick around and answer questions.
Senator Bloom, can you kind of break down some of the biggest proposals in your bill?
Yeah, let me get my note at my binder, my handy binder, with some highlights here. I've got two on. Lost it there. Okay. The biggest one that's probably going to create headlines is this creating a criminal offense related to unlawful activity of a gas-operated semi-automatic firearm. So that's it's a more tailored definition of an assault weapon, which is not a specific category. So trying to take more of a technology-specific approach there. One of the other big proposals is around large capacity ammunition feeding devices. So there's a couple of different pieces there. Talks about the offense of possessing or distributing a firearm attachment. So that's these sorts of the hardware that can turn a semi-automatic into an automatic weapon. Let's see. We rope in restricted persons, category 1 and 2 restricted persons that already are restricted from owning firearms, and just include ammunition in that area, which seems like a pretty straightforward approach. Looking at the issue of serial numbers and those sorts of things, and making it a misdemeanor to remove the identification marking on firearms. It implements a 5-day waiting period after the purchase of a firearm. So once you've gotten a background check, there's a waiting period, which I think is a really important way of being able to separate people that may be in a certain state of mind from committing harm to themselves or the community. And then it also has a piece about regulating or posting a written notification about negligence in gun stores.
Senator, could you talk about, do you expect your bill to actually receive a committee hearing? Typically, you sort of already alluded to this, the Utah legislature is not friendly to gun control legislation. What's your response to that? And if your bill doesn't receive a committee hearing, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, it already got included on an agenda for a committee yesterday, and then that committee was canceled, so I don't know what exactly happened there. I don't think the bill had actually been assigned to the rules at that point, so we're early in session, things happen. I do think it'll get a hearing. Definitely encourage people to reach out to their legislators, especially if they are on I think it'll get assigned to the Natural Resources Committee, which many gun bills tend to do. And yeah, make sure it gets a hearing. I think that's the big thing. So I think it will. Like I mentioned, we know there's support across Utah for these sorts of policies. So if people are supportive, hopefully they'll reach out and let the legislature know that they do want to at least see a conversation. And to be frank, I'm totally interested in engaging with folks who like certain parts of this and maybe want to see something move forward and something not. We can have those conversations and negotiate. I think that's a totally fair approach.
Is this an open forum? You taking questions from anybody?
Sorry, we have one final speaker, so we'll just leave questions for the press, specifically towards the last time.
We will. Hopefully, we'll have a committee hearing, like was just mentioned. So, I think that if you're opposed to the bill, I think that would be the best time to voice that opposition, and that's totally fair. I think that I'm happy to hear you. I'm happy to step into the hall, especially if I can get to my committee and get situated. But the open committee hearing is going to be the best time to voice those opposition.
And when is that?
We don't know yet.
Now we'll hear from Nika Allgood.
Thank you, Senator Bloom, for running this important bill. SB 130 proposes a number of things to address gun violence. but I want to focus my comments on a few important provisions regarding machine gun firearm attachments and large capacity magazines. SB 130 would introduce a new state-level prohibition on what are called in this bill machine gun firearm attachments. They are also often called machine gun conversion devices. Sometimes they're called Glock switches or autoseers. These machine gun firearm attachments convert a weapon that is legal into one that can automatically shoot more than one shot with a single function of a trigger. In other words, turns it into a machine gun. While these devices make it possible to fire 50 to 100 shots a minute, they also make it more difficult to aim. I can see no reason to have guns with fully automatic conversion devices other than to cause mass injury quickly to a large group of people. Just a few examples. In the first weekend of June 2024, police in 4 U.S. cities investigated shootings in which they believe machine gun firearm attachments were used. In those 4 shootings alone, 42 people were shot, 2 fatally, authorities said. At one of the shooting sites, the police found more than 100 spent casings. States across the political spectrum, from New York to Alabama, are recognizing the danger that these devices present to public safety. We need to give Utah law enforcement the tools they need to confront the emerging threat of machine gun firearm attachments, and SB 130 will accomplish that. SB 130 would also restrict large capacity magazines. Large capacity magazines work hand in hand with machine gun firearm attachments to give a shooter the ability to quickly spray an area with many shots. So it makes sense that the provisions to restrict access to large capacity magazines should be included along with provisions against machine gun firearm attachments. In December of 2019, the American Journal of Public Health published a study showing that between the years 1990 and 2017, there were 69 high-fatality mass shootings in the U.S. Attacks involving large-capacity magazines resulted in a 62% higher death toll. Their research also showed that the incidence of high-fatality mass shootings in states that did not ban large-capacity magazines were more than double the rates of fatalities in states that do ban them. Restricting ownership of large capacity magazines is a proven way to reduce the number of victims in mass shootings. I've given a lot of data here, but this is not just about data to me. In 2003, my brother Jordan was shot and killed during the robbery of his coin store in St. George, Utah. So I know firsthand the grief that goes with losing a loved one to gun violence. Jordan was such a good friend to me, and he was such a good man. I never want another family to have to experience that grief and loss. I invite every Utahn to contact their state senator and representative and encourage them to support SB 130. Thank you.
Thank you, Nika. I want to thank all of our speakers here today, including Senator Napolitan, for his dedication and support for bettering the lives of Americans and Utahns. Thank you so much for your support. Sure. Thank you. Nothing else. I think that we can take any more questions. If
We have another big bill, House Bill 133, that's in committee this afternoon.
Is that Lisenby's bill?
Yes. Lots of things it'll do, including lowering the concealed carry to 18 years. Any response to you about this bill?
Yeah, I think that's a step in the wrong direction. I think there have been proposals. I think in that same Deseret News polling, there was pretty substantial support for actually increasing the age to purchase a firearm. So I don't think that's the way that people want to go. And I would encourage Representative Lisenby to reach out to her community and see if there's actually widespread support for this, or if it's just coming from a really targeted part of the population. Happy to hear from you guys. A statement or a
Right now?
sure, yeah. If you guys want to try and keep it relatively brief, but yeah,
Sure, I have a bunch of questions, but
Yeah, happy to-
I'm concerned with this. So you want to do the 5-day waiting period? I've been carrying for more than 30 years. I've had my CCW for more than 20. When I go in to buy a gun, there's a database that gets activated, or they look to see if I'm a felon or whatever. Yeah, and no no different than if I don't have a CCW. If I go to a pawn shop and buy a gun, they have to do a background check. Sometimes it takes 15, 20 minutes, sometimes it takes 4 or 5 hours. Is that database up to date? So why would there, if it is, then why would there be a 5-day waiting period? If you're legally, you're not mental diminished or whatever. And I've seen gun owners, I've seen gun shops not allow somebody to buy a gun because they walked in, they kind of had cross-eyed and they're twitching. Why would you have a 5-day waiting period? There's no need for it. If the databases are up to date, why would you need that?
I think it's a fair point. I think that the whole point of a waiting period is just it's a big kind of blanket implement for sure. I can't think of I'm sure this exists. I can't think of all that many reasons you would need a firearm. Half an hour after deciding to purchase it. Again, I'm sure it exists, but it's a way to put a big imposition there on folks who are who maybe head in the wrong direction with that. So if they do have malintent for themselves, for other people, it's a way to stem that off. And it's a big tool. And if we can think of other ways to get at that problem, whether it's data or something else, I think that's a fair conversation.
Just like with that though, there was just a case not too long ago, maybe a few years ago, where a lady had the restraining order against somebody. She went to go buy a gun to protect herself. They had a waiting period. She ended up getting killed by the guy who she had a restraining order from within that time. It's a double-edged sword.
Sure. I think we know that that people who own firearms are generally more likely to get injured by firearms. Double-edged sword in a couple ways, I think, on that one, and hopefully that sounds like a public safety issue. I mean, we need to figure out how the public safety officers, how the police, how other folks in that space can better protect folks like that, because it's absolutely valid concern. Never want to see that happen, of course.
We appreciate it, but we'll leave. If you
Thank
have
you.
questions for us constituents, for the center, you can wait outside. With
My
spaces just
information
visible
is all
there.
public. We'd love to have you guys, testify however you want to testify, assuming this gets a committee hearing.
But the
Let's
folks
do
on
it.
this side have any questions, happy to take them now. If not, we can wrap this up. Give you a few folks back a couple of minutes from your Friday. Awesome, appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Gun Violence Prevention Center has many copies of the Utah Gun Violence Report that we are bringing in every 2 years. And so if any organizations or interested members would like a copy, we're giving them out with a sign-up sheet. Thank you.